Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Plus Three Futures and Commodities Show. It is Friday, December 15th, right before the close, and we are recording. My name is Ben Maldonado, and as always, I'm here with my partner, Barry Hederachi. Barry, how we doing?
Doing great, doing great.
You got all your Christmas shopping done?
Let's say I'm halfway there. Kind of
Oh
like the
man,
market.
you're really good. I have to admit I haven't even started. It's not something I like to do, so I usually procrastinate. But
Man, I'm the same way. I'm the same
that's a
way.
whole nother story.
Yeah.
In the markets, boy, we sure had some presents for the bulls this week.
hmm
The big question is, where do we go from here?
Yeah, well, it's always a thing, right?
Yeah, where do we go
Especially,
from here?
especially a week like we've had. Well,
Hmm
we'll get into that. We'll get into that. You're going to talk about the Nasdaq, right? So we'll have that.
I'm
And
going to cover the Nasdaq. I'm going to cover Bitcoin, and there's not a lot on the commodity side. We're going to look at wheat, sugar, coffee, and copper.
sounds good.
Everything else is kind of in no man's land at this point.
Let's pick it up where we left off last week, which was really the whole story was around 46.06.
Where you were bumping up against your 60 for multiple weeks.
Yeah, for multiple weeks. And we had that level, we had it for a while, and it's a pretty solid level.
Hmm
I mean, our basic take was, listen, if we get above 46.06, we're going to go. And I pointed out this dash line, which happens to be, I think I said 48.48, which is really like 48.51.
hmm
What's a couple of points here and there, right? So
Right.
it's up
You
in this.
also said you said it was an easy 100 points too, and we got that and some.
Yeah, we got the easy 100 points. And it
Hmm
was incredible, how
Yeah,
that happened.
yeah.
Anyway, so where do we go from here? Now you have some cycles coming up next week, the Rebel Yell cycle. Anything else?
Saturday.
Saturday. Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
which is it's a big one. It can be 2 to 12 weeks, so it's been getting some decent hits lately. We're gonna have to see what happens next week,
Yeah, that
starting
one
with
we
the
have to kind of depend on price action too, right? Because it could hit in
absolutely.
the early part of the cycle any day.
Yep, yep.
And I'm kind of feeling the same way, but let's take a look at it. And I've been talking about a 36, we were looking at the square 72 on this,
hmm
and we have a 36 days coming right up in here, but we really kind of blew through the 72 square.
Right.
That happens, next one is really 90. I mean, here we
hmm
are, that's right up at 48 and a
48,
half.
50. Yep.
But keeping the 60 square for now. I just wanted to, before we get, deep dive into this, I wanted to look at the Dow,
hmm
and because I kind of brought it up last week,
Yeah.
and we talked about this leg. And last week,
Wow.
last week when I brought it up, it didn't look so, that we'd be that close and
No.
this soon, right?
And you hit it.
And look at that.
Yep.
We hit it with no problem, and there's the target and there's the price, and you can see the Dow reversed after hitting that.
And there's the
Now,
144 just
and
above.
exactly. So
Yeah.
not only do we have, okay, ABC, great, we have that,
hmm
but we also, it happens to be 144 degrees up, and
hmm
that's something. And the
hmm
Dow I was watching, the whole time, and I had I only had three levels watching the whole time. I can't remember when we looked at it last, but every
hmm
few weeks I've looked at this if we had anything. I think when we were at the lows, my comment was, hey, if we can get about 33,000, that means we're above 72 on the Dow, 72 degrees up.
hmm
Then, the low is in place because we had some other things at the low. So we
hmm
got above that. Then the whole thing was we got stuck below 34,450. You can see how we had this right little cluster here.
hmm
And what happened there? Well, it consolidated for a while, and then from there it started to move. And then you can see, and there are no levels after that because
hmm
my final level was 35,596, and we've looked at this every few weeks. And the point there was, if we get through that, we're gonna go.
Yep.
And we're gonna probably go. That opens up the square. This is what we talked about, opening up the square, right? So here's a half
hmm
square, 50% of the square of 72. What happens? It went all the way up to 144. That opens up that entire thing. And look how fast we caught up to that.
Sure.
And
And the pullback there was super shallow, didn't even make it back to the half square.
Exactly. Yep. It was very shallow. Didn't even come back to the highs here. You see that? So that kind of air being there, so all of that was really pointing to the upside, and we weren't really calling for any highs or anything. We were just kind of playing along with that. But this is really more of a blow off move now, right? You can see the angle, you see the steepness. And now it's just a matter of figuring out where this high is going to be. Not that we're calling for some kind of a crash, but just to know when, the probability of the high that can hold for a while being in place. Now, markets being markets, sure, we could hit 144 still and maybe even get above a little bit, maybe hit 3,800, who knows, right? But we're in the realm, we're in the area, the ABCDs and some of the geometry helps us figure that out. So I'm saying now, we talk about red lights and green lights and yellow lights. This is definitely a yellow light that we reached a kind of a critical area. Now we might see the same thing in the NASDAQ, but we'll take a look later. But I just wanted to show that. And the other thing, I watch the Hang Seng, and you can see, it was almost, it's almost inverse, right? Our markets have been moving. I mean, look at this drive. While we were going up, Hang Seng was going down. And look what happened today. Friday.
Gap up.
And we closed above this lower trend line. And this usually when we have 3 or 4 drives going like this and we really drop below sell off, it's kind of a climax, right? Then from there, we want to see how it's going to recover. And the huge gap the next day. And so it flipped to the other side. Now, it would have been great if we went all the way down to the half square, which we didn't. But all right, let's watch it. But I'm just saying we definitely reversed from that leg, and we've been going inverse. So it's something to notice. I'm talking about things to notice. Clearly, we need to get above this 16,933, let's say. Settling above that is really what's going to get the momentum going. Right now, it's just could be a dead cat bounce, right? As far as that goes. But it's something to watch. Why am I saying that? Well, because looks like we put in a low here because of the gap, gap up, right? And if you look at it, this could be a 1-2 because that did make a lower low. That
pullback, yep.
And this could be a 3. So, maybe he's running his own mini cycle. So to talk about those things to show, hey, we're getting close to some targets. And as far as the S&P goes, well, one other thing, let me cover before the S&P. Let's look at the cash index. Let's look at, okay, here we go. Now, I posted this on Twitter, I don't know, a couple of days ago.
That's such a nice chart.
It's a really good chart. And, if somebody's studying geometry and whatnot, then, it's super valuable. So basically what we're looking at is sort of a, mirrored move, right? Often markets will terminate pretty much in the same areas and often in the same time, in the time windows, price and time. So here, price-wise, we basically made the same, and time-wise, we're right there. It's really a couple of bars from the 50% mark. And now you guys see like a little red shaded area. This is the cash index, right? And I had 4684 based on the cash. And the idea was, if we can hold above that, that's fairly positive, and we have to wait because we could easily go to 4818, 4820. So we don't want to jump the gun here, but we want to be aware that, hey, we did make a full run, and that matches this. And we weren't screaming this all the way up. We were only looking at it because it did make that. You know what I mean? And if it makes this at someday, continues to go, we'll call that out too. But for now, that's where we are. So as far as the cash goes, we want to watch 4684. Like if we gap down on Monday or something, well, something is up. And that's how we use it. For now, this is a very steep angle that is climbing, and there's no way it's going to hold it for much longer. It's just physics, right? Say. And the 1x1 45-degree angle is quite far away.
Yeah.
So no matter what, we're looking at 4,400, 4,450, 4,500 is right there. That's 200 points, and perfectly bullish even at this level.
Sure.
So we want to be, lightening up a little bit and kind of watching it at least at these points because, inflection points.
Mm-hmm.
Now, coming back to the E-mini, and the reason I want to look at those other ones is, we did have a new contract, so there's some premium built into the price, that could affect things. But the levels are still good, 4850s, 4850, 4606 is still that. And because of the steepness of the move we had this week, there's really no, there's no support areas to call out really close by.
Mm-mm.
You know what I mean? The only close one we can even look at was one of the numbers we looked at last week, which would be the square 72. And that would be, we want to sort of hold around above 4,700. So that keeps it fairly tight. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let me move this down here to remind us. So there we go. So 4,700, that's still 70 points, man.
Yeah.
That's a big,
That's a good day.
that's a good day. And it's a very, steep correction, eh?
Yeah.
However that goes. I mean, we have this biggest, what is it? Historically, it's the biggest expiration, right?
Yeah, today. Yep.
In the trillion. So what is it, 304 trillion, something like that?
Something like that.
It's
Yeah.
huge. So we'll see what effect that will have.
It looks like they're juicing it near the close.
Yeah, definitely juicing it. And well, yeah. Anyway, getting back to this, so 4,700 is really let's just say the next level of support, the closest I can
Mm-hmm.
sort of find. Okay. So let me mark that. We're good there. Long as we're above 4,700, what I can say is we can easily go up and touch 4,850.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now it would be great if we can do that in one run and be done and over with. But long as we're hanging up above 4,700, just remember we can tap that on any kind of news.
Yep.
Just remember that. Now, what about, so that's the upside. What about the downside? Downside, well, it's going to have to start at 4,700. I mean, there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing I can do up in here
Mm-hmm.
that's of any value. And the high, we have 4805, 4806 over here. What is that? 4808 and a quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite there, but if we go, we're going to go all the way to 4850. I mean, that's looks like the natural place because this is 60 and a half a square. That's another 30. That's 90 degrees up here.
Yep. 90 up is 48.42. I have that in my notes. That's a target.
Okay. So it's up in here.
Mm-hmm.
And I had some other numbers. That's why I get this 4851
Sure.
and this weird
Sure.
numbers because
Yep.
I kind of move it around a little bit. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I tweak it. And we're getting some, interesting numbers coming up as far as cycles go. We have 720 coming up in here week after next.
Mm-hmm.
We're up 60 in here next week. So we're watching this closely. Let the market run its course. 4,700 is the level we're watching. If it holds above that, great. And if we drop another 100 points to 46, well, it's still fine. That was the
It is.
old resistance, right?
Yep.
And so whatever the case, it's going to be sort of action packed and we're not going to, get in the way of the market. So we'll let it, if it hits the target here, then we'll look for timing and work it from that point. Up until it does that, we're just watching the price action and it's really extremely bullish about 4,700 and definitely on firm ground about 4606. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. Let's quickly look at the 30-minute. This is the March contract. And here the numbers look a little different, but it's also 30-minute.
Mm-hmm.
And here we do have this 4818 number. Of course, it's a 30-minute, so things are a little bit different, and it's a little tighter.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess if you guys want even a closer number, that would be this 4744. It's really a number to watch because it's always good to have something close to the collar.
Mm-hmm.
So I would watch the 4744 for like the initial sort of imbalance. And I know I said above 4,700, we're in really good shape.
Mm-hmm.
While we looked at this 4,700 here. And when you're looking at the 30-minute, you can see we have 47.44, and we also have 47.11 as a level.
Mm-hmm.
But let 47.44 be the initial sort of, your canary in the coal mine.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's take a quick look at the weekly. Weekly, what's interesting in weekly is we're almost at 81 degrees. It's right there.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's close enough for trading business.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing I wanted to show you guys was this. So if you look at it, we are 3/4 of the way into the square, and we're 100% into the square price wise. So we do have a square there. It's really like 60 by 80.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, around 60. And that's a square. It does balance out at that ratio. So we have to watch that. And if we make, higher highs next week, okay, fine. We'll just leave it at that. But this is something to notice, because this square of 81 has worked extremely well.
Yes, it has.
And I want to continue to watch it and point out things, when it comes in.
One thing I want to point out, Barry, and this is something you did. If you remember when we fell out of the channel, and then the 1 week we got back in about 4 or 5 weeks ago, you said this is important because it means
Right.
momentum can kick back in again.
Right. Yeah.
And look at what happened after that bar. After the big green bar, the second bar is when we got back in the channel. And look at what happened since then. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. Yeah. I forgot about that. Thanks for reminding me. And also, that reminded me about this 50% square. We had this little buffer set up. When this came in here, I remember talking about that, saying, hey, we are at support.
Yep.
Watch out. And we took out the highs. And over here, we got inside, got back into the channel, and boom. So all that's been good. It's wild, but good. And now let's just see what happens. But you guys need to know we're up at at an important point right there.
Agreed.
All right, let's move on to bonds. Bonds
have been pushing.
Bonds have been running. It's like got let out of the barn or something, right? So it's like
after getting their brains beat in for 3 years.
It's good. It's good.
Yep.
It's almost Christmas. Let them have a little
yep
breathing room. Okay. So let me just read this out really quick. We had the ABCD put up here. Now, one of the rules, if you guys trade the Gartleys or look at the ABCDs, is once we have the ABCD hit almost to the tick here.
Yep.
And then we pull back, and then, a couple 3 days later, we take it out decisively, which we did right there on Wednesday. Well, that's a sign the ABCD is done.
Yep.
There's no ABCD now. And we're not going to do all the Fibonacci stuff because it's not worth the trouble. But the ABCD is done. So I'm thinking we're going to go up to this square 72, which just happens to be, let's say 125 and a half. Okay. And I think that's really the area, but I wouldn't be surprised if we move a little higher. I mean, we do have, upper range of this consolidation here. So it's really kind of, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's interesting too. Put an ABCD on from the low, and then see that little jag in the middle, and look where you go.
From the jag in the middle, this one here?
Right here by the trend line. Yep.
Well, let's see where that goes.
Yeah, I put it on and I was like, aha.
It's fun to put them on, man, because it gives you some kind of a point in space.
Yep.
And then you can work your other technicals to see if anything shows up there. Wow. Well, there you go. Right at the 124 number, right?
That's right. And right at a cycle date, an important cycle date. I mean, it's a lot of stuff to look at when we get price action next week, because as you go through markets, you see a lot of this kind of stuff. ABCDs completing, the markets into resistance, markets into support.
Right.
So,
well, that looks very good. And well, it really kind of boxes up the price then. We got the 124, about 1.5 points is where we're looking at. 72, square 72, you guys, is really working well in the bond. So let's just stay with that
Mhm.
and see what happens. And if it gets taken out, then clearly we're going higher.
Mhm.
So because of the speed of movement from the half square on up right into sort of the target zone, 124. And I think we have enough space to go 125.5. So watch that point and a half
Yep,
buffer there.
I think you're right on because I have a weekly full square at 125.07, monthly full square 126.5. So, like you said, a point and a half.
Okay.
A lot of stuff in there.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's see what happens.
Hmm.
Let's look at the weekly bonds
Into the box.
into the box. And of course, the weekly has is 128.07,
Hmm.
it says. So I'll just keep it there. But anyway, we're running right into this overhead. So this is where, we're going to separate this out and see, is it real or is it what? And then we're going to look at what kind of a correction we get.
Hmm.
And I'm expecting that we're going to see something soon, because there's a lot of pressure here, and let it dissipate. So 128 on the weekly. Not really excited about this. I don't think this is, gonna run another 10 points or anything next week. Of course,
Hmm.
never know, but let's just say,
Right. It's got levels.
but
It's got
I'm watching
overhead
this
to get
cautiously
through.
because we're kind of in the zone, right?
In the zone. Yep.
We're in the zone, so we're kind of watching that caution. Anything you want to add to this?
No, I think I think you got the levels. You got the we're moving right into this resistance at important levels, and we got to see how it handles it.
Right. Yep. Yeah, that's all I can. Yeah, and he's running into all of this 72 here. So
Yeah,
yeah, that
absolutely.
should be kind of it. So let's just see next
Might
week.
just grind next week.
Exactly.
Mhm.
All right, crude, kind of in the
Some
same place, kind of
some green
expected.
shoots though.
Yeah. Yep. And also a little expandy triangle
Hmm.
going on
Hmm.
right there,
Hmm.
But we're within our 10-point range. It's between levels, not much to add to that. I mean, it would have been nice to have it square out here.
We did do a square, Barry. 50. I had 54
54
by
by 50.
54.
Yeah, 54 by
Yeah.
54 would hit there.
Hmm.
That's pretty good, because the crude runs on 72s, 144. So
Hmm.
that would make sense. Well, let's see how that looks.
Oh,
Perfect.
look at
Oh,
that.
man, look at that.
Yeah.
Right on the money.
Yep.
Well, let's see what happens, right?
Exactly.
Let's watch that really, really
See if
close.
we can get some higher highs and higher lows, and then we got something to build on.
There we go. I'll leave the quarters on there for next week.
Hmm.
We have a reference.
Hmm.
Okay, let's see what happens. But generally, I'm looking for weakness below 73.5.
Right.
And ultimately, the good support is around 65, 64, 75, 65.
Hmm.
That's the story there. Here's our weekly. Pretty much, we were expecting it to hold this line, and
It nicely did.
and it did.
And look at that! Look at that bar. They bought it up nicely for the weekly.
Yeah, that was a nice trick.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, but the thing on the weekly is because of the squares and how the patterns are, we really wanted to have it get above 73.5,
Exactly.
unless we get down to that 60, 63 and a three-quarter number first, then we can say, hey, we did get to some kind of a low.
Hmm.
In the meantime, till we get up in there, I'm not, so sure here. It might sort of sideways for a bit.
Crude is the poster child of what I said, where a lot of these commodities are in no man's land.
Yeah, we're definitely in there. I mean, if you look
Yep.
at this band right here, this box, this was big time no man's land for a while,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? See that?
Hmm.
And we're right in there. So that's it for crude. Let's talk about gold. Gold is still holding above 2000, which is positive.
Hmm.
And that's all I got to say.
The thing I tweeted
Yeah.
or I posted on X this week was when we had the big reversal is we had outside reversal bars on gold, silver, and copper, all three.
Yeah,
And
well,
so now let's see what they do with that. We did
Right.
have one day of follow through, but now we have a pullback already. So
Mhm.
let's see.
Yeah, let's see what happens. I mean, there are times to be really involved in it. Right now, we've made the high, and the way it came in price and time, A, B, C, D, it really looks like that leg's done.
Hmm.
So let it settle out. If we can sort of settle above 2000, well, it's very bullish, and we can pop any minute.
Yep.
If we get under that, then we have this 1940 to 2000 range, and we'll see how that bottoms out.
Agreed.
Yeah, so we have time to watch that.
Hmm.
Not much to do at the moment.
No man's land.
Kind of. Yep, you're right. You're right. And so here's the weekly. Pretty much the same story. We have 50% of the square right there around 2059, 2059.
Hmm.
And we have 2000 on the lower end. So we're in that bracket. So not much to do there. So we'll leave it at that. Now, this is why, if we get below 2000, it's definitely shifted into a weaker position. So we'll watch that closely.
No question.
Yeah. And copper, which you're covering also.
Hmm.
The best thing is, we got about the 50% square, we talk about a lot.
And we're holding.
And we're holding. We held it.
Yeah.
Held it. Didn't get everybody get scared and run away. So,
Right.
so 383 is holding. That's nice. If we can do that, I think with the Hang Seng popping up a little bit, it's possible we sort of creep up a little bit,
I agree. It looks
And,
bullish.
408 is there. So, all right, holding steady. These lows came in. You can see how we've been making higher lows and higher highs ever since the lows came in. This is why you want to look at where things came from, right? We came down in here, tested, false break, started moving higher. So I'd say so far so good. It's kind of moving in slow water,
Hmm.
but it's moving,
Yeah. Setting up nicely.
setting up nicely. And even for equal move here, we put this little ABCD tool last week. We've had an inside week. So that means if this week's high gets taken out, it's possible we make some quick ground up into this 4 area.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's all I have for copper. Let's take a look at the dollar. Well, not as bullish as I imagined.
Right. Right.
And it's coming right into this range. We have this range in here, the box, right?
Hmm.
And you can see we bounce right off of it. Let me
Extend it over.
extend it over a little bit. There we go. So that is the next, support area. It's between 101 and let's say 102. There's 1 point range there.
Hmm.
And not much to say, it hasn't squared out or anything. Even 60 doesn't quite get it there, but the dollar really is running a 72. And I think the key here is to see if we can get above that 50% of the square here.
Hmm.
If we can do that, I think this might be kind of a washout or a false break.
Yeah. The correction could be over.
Yeah. But if we can't get above this 102.80, 102.8, then probably,
Chop around.
chop around in weaker conditions for a while.
Hmm.
And the weekly dollar, let's take a quick look. Came right down to our trend line. I don't know if you guys can see that. Can you see that
Yeah.
trend line?
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. That's nice.
We had that drawn up prior, and I think the comment when I drew that is, hey, as long as we're above this trend line, it's okay.
Hmm.
And so it's okay, not terrible. And it's still okay as long as it's above this 90, which I've been saying. And that's the par, say 100 and a
100.5, right?
100 and a half.
Hmm.
So that's the deal. And we really kind of want to take out this 104 up in this area where 2 weeks, 2 weekly highs, 3 weekly highs up in there. So that's really the key level to take out. In the meantime, if we can maintain above this trend line, okay, positive, right? And give it time to kind of adjust. It's had a busy year.
Yeah.
So dollar, we're not seeing any corners yet. We're kind of playing by price, right? Trend is down. Sometimes I don't see things thinking it's obvious, but sometimes maybe I shouldn't mention it. If you draw your trend lines, the trend is down. It hasn't squared out. We're kind of waiting to see where it's going to find some traction as far as the price goes. And euro went back up, didn't quite do a false break, really tried, right?
It did
It
try.
would have been beautiful, but it's acting like it did a false break. We had this
Yeah,
big,
because you had a sharp reversal.
really sharp reversal inside bar. So watch, you know, to see if today's low gets taken out. I mean, clearly we're going to go up and test this 108 area then. So you popped up a little bit above it, and it's still in that ABCD completion area. I'm not, really excited about this until one of these corrections hold about 108. Then we can say, okay, we're getting some traction and maybe go up and challenge the area up above around 127, let's say. You want to add anything to that?
No,
Or
I think that's pretty accurate.
yeah, this 108 is a key level to watch at this
Mhm.
point. Instead of getting buried in technicals, you want to pick like one thing that sort of a good solid indicator that can act like a marker.
Mm-hmm.
So here, we got below 108, then we ran up a little bit, one bar down, came back up. So not quite up, not quite down.
Mm-hmm.
Last week we were below 108. Now we're above 108. So I think let this FOMC ripple kind of settle down and let everybody see clear again, and we'll see what happens. But as long as we're above this 108 area, I think, we have to say that it's more positive. Up until we get into resistance is 1010, 109 area, 109 and a half.
Mm-hmm.
If we get up in there, that's resistance, and that area we can look for selling something. And if we get above that, then we got this 90 area that we covered. So because of this leg ended so perfectly, I really don't see it taking out these highs. I think this is
Mm-hmm.
just more of a, I don't know what you'd call it, noise.
Mm-hmm.
Noise is what you'd call it if you look at this box, right? Do you see a trend
Yeah,
there?
yeah,
No, right? No trend. And if you take today's close and you go back, 2023 January close was exactly about the same place. So a whole year of sideways. So I
Yep.
call that not much, bunch of noise. Very controlled, by the way.
Yep.
It's difficult to keep it like that when everything's going down the chute. So,
Yeah.
at least the dollar had some good movement. So,
Right.
little respect there. Well, that's pretty much what I have. We looked at the Hang Seng. Are you going to look at natural gas?
I'll talk about it, but I'm
Yeah.
not going to cover it in
Well, the thing is,
detail.
we talked about this 250 level, which happens
Yeah.
to be 120 degrees off the high here.
Yep.
And the point was, I was saying how that's always a point, sort of a contact point. If you look back all the way to February, all year, basically, right? We were
Right.
kind of reverting back and forth, back and forth. Now, are we going to go for new lows? I don't think so. These lows, I remember, came in on good cycles. They expired,
Mm-hmm.
and we were expecting to continue to make higher lows and higher highs. Something went off here, and we're, correcting again, right back into this, I would say, kind of a sloppy up move, right? We were
Mm-hmm.
going up sloppily. So really, we need at this point to close above 250. If we can get above 250, then we can say, oh, well, that was kind of a expedition,
Mm-hmm.
and see what happens next. But for now, nothing. We're just looking at it and talking about in terms of a big low getting put in.
Agreed.
So nothing to get excited about. All right. I think that's all I got. We talked about this.
Yep.
Talked about everything. All right. Let me put it back to you, and we'll cover all the things you got going.
Excellent. Excellent coverage.
All right. Thanks, Ben. See you in a minute. All right, Ben. That looks like 2 squares up.
Sure does. And just like with the ES that we were talking about, 90 up is right about there.
Okay. We're close.
We are really close to 90 up
Mm-hmm.
off of this low.
Right.
So what we've been talking about was when we got above this full square, as long as we were below the half square, we were stuck until as long as we were above the full square, you couldn't be bearish. Well, now we're above the half square, and look what happened.
Yeah.
3 days we're right up to the full square.
Yeah. Those breaks are just something, right? When the squares break out.
Yeah. Yep. And the key things here are we're closing right on the full square. So it's a decision point, right? Do we get stuck under here and then, have to we could pull all the way back to here, which is around 16,200 and
Mhm.
still be bullish.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
We pull back here, sit on top of it, and then we can, we can either bounce around in here or, push through this full square. Now, if we get on top of this and sit up here, it opens up the half square up here,
Right.
which is around 17,400.
Mm-hmm.
So it's in a decision point. We are coming up on a rebel yell cycle date tomorrow, so we got to be aware of that.
Right.
Here's the, if Barry and I always talk about, how did we get here? Well, pretty powerful move up.
Quickly.
Yeah. So the cycle date is very interesting in terms of the timing and where
Right.
we are at resistance. So we want to watch that. Let's also look at the weekly.
Mm-hmm.
Look where the high is there.
Wow. That's pretty good.
Right into the full square. And we made basically a new all-time closing high today.
Boy, next week's going to be the one.
Major things are
Major,
going to be
major.
happening,
Yep,
right?
yep, yep.
So here, I mean, you guys know the drill on the squares, right? If we get stuck below there, we could certainly, odds favor, we're going to come back all the way to, 15,600,
Right, right.
to 1,200 points,
Man, I can't even imagine like a classic double top in here.
right?
I just can't, but that's exactly when these things happen.
That's the setup. If we get on, in contrast, if we get on top and we sit on top of this, which is, let's call it 16,900 roughly, we sit on top of that, it opens up 18,200 almost.
Well, that's funny you said that, 18,200, because on my charts, if we hold above 16,200, let's say,
which
right?
is right about there.
Okay, that's a 50% of one of my squares. It's a
Mm-hmm.
60-degree square, or you can say it's a 90. That's 90 up is that level, 16,200. And my next full square is 18,200.
Right in there.
Right there. So that's
Mm-hmm.
incredible. Because
Yep.
I know we're going off different levels, different places.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're converging at that level. So yeah, definitely keep in mind.
It's going to be an interesting week for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you want to add on the NQs on the weekly or the daily?
Well, just
Any?
that, long as we're above that level, what was it? 16,200. I think it's bullish.
Mm-hmm.
We have to wait for how the rebel cycle and some of these other cycles come and affect it. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll wait and see. We're in a hurry.
Nah, it's going to be very, very eventful.
Mm-hmm.
And what's funny too is we're going into this period of the year when people are taking off for 2 weeks and people aren't going to be as tuned into the market. And wouldn't it just be crazy if they made a major move either up or down during this time period?
Well, the Nasdaq definitely has room to the upside. I mean, it can definitely do 17,000 and a little bit of change. No problem.
Get to that 90. Yeah, that 90 we were talking about.
Yep. So let's see.
We'll see. Let's jump over to Bitcoin because Bitcoin's done something interesting I wanted to point out.
Yeah,
From
lower high.
Yeah, a lower high, but also from these September lows to this high, 90.
Well,
in time.
Okay, check this out. From the lows of November, November 22nd, 2022. From
over
that low
over here.
To that high is 225 degrees up. Which is, it's a solid level.
Yeah, it is a solid level.
And that square 45, or you can call it square 90, has been working really, really well. So that's in place. And it's 405 days from that low.
Wow.
So 405 by 225 at that
That's
high.
a good square.
What's that?
That's a good square.
Yeah, it's exactly at that high, that, the high bar, that little tiny, right there is exactly 405 bars from that 22nd and 225 up. So that's why I said, laughing, hey, there's your lower high.
Yeah, it's potentially significant.
Well, I
And
think
if
it's
you
done. There's my call.
oh, and let me tell you something else, Barry,
Yeah.
that supports you. Look at that high bar. That's a false break.
Yeah, absolutely.
Classic, and
Absolutely.
there's your move off of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so here's your, let's say this is the first push down. Here's your pullback,
Hmm.
a little modest. Of course, it's trying to close right on the half square. So you got to debate whether it's bullish or bearish. But if it rolls over here,
Well, I like your trend line, man. If that trend line, that could be the whole key right there. Just watch that trend line.
yeah,
That one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep. So there's something happened here, and Barry had it for a bigger cycle. I had the 90 days from here,
Hmm.
90 in time. So let's watch this. If we take out this low, or as Barry said, if you take out the trend line, or even earlier, if we get stuck below this half square, there could be some selling coming into Bitcoin.
Yep.
The next big level is obviously going to be down here at the full square. You can see it both structurally and with geometry. That's going to be an important spot. But there potentially is something finished up there. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Hmm.
What am I going to cover today? So I'm going to cover wheat. I'm going to cover sugar. And sugar is more of like a post-mortem because there's nothing to do right now. But I want to show it because it's beautiful from an educational standpoint. Coffee, which looks really good, continues to look good. And then briefly, I'll talk about copper because Barry covered it in depth. Most of the commodities, like corn and cotton, they're going sideways. Nothing to do there. Soybeans is kind of finishing up a pullback. There's no momentum there. Nothing to do yet. Cocoa is trying to put in a top. We've got 2 of 3 drives in place. So there could be one more push up, and then that could be a decent short. Gold and silver. Barry covered gold. Silver's in the same position. We're kind of, we had a nice outside reversal bar on Wednesday, shot up, and then we pulled back. So they're kind of finishing up their corrections and trying to figure out, is there more to go on correction in price, or are we just going to chop around in time and then head back higher? Crude, Barry covered very well. We did do not only did we do that 54 by 54, I'm just looking at my notes. In crude, we did a weekly square from the 10-1 high, from the October 1 high. It's 27 by 11. So again, there's green shoots there. We just need to see evidence of higher lows and higher highs coming out of this hole, and then we can get involved. Nat gas, Barry covered that quickly too. I think that 250 something level, we break the downtrend line that we just saw, and 267 is really important on a half square basis on the weekly. So if you want to look at a bigger picture, 267 is really important in nat gas. Okay. So let's jump into the ones that we're covering. Let's start off with wheat. Unlike the other 2 grains that we cover primarily on the show, corn and soybeans, this thing is really acting well, right? We put in the bottom, we came up, we did higher highs and higher lows, and then we said, okay, we talked about this, completing something here, and there was going to be a pullback. Look at how shallow the pullback was, and it pretty much sat on top of this downtrend line from the Russian invasion of Ukraine highs.
Right.
And then today we had a nice powerful reversal, closed on the high. This to me looks like it's ready to run. I really like the way wheat looks. Let me show you the weekly here as well, because there's something I wanted to point out. This is our second consecutive. We had, even though it's an inside bar, and you could say, oh, that's not super bullish. It wasn't a down bar, and this was the correction week, right? This was a week where it was pausing, and look at where we've got the close for 2 weeks in a row now has been on outside of this downtrend line. So the downtrend line's been pierced, and now we've got 2 consecutive weekly closes where we are outside of the downtrend line, and I think this thing is ready to go. I don't know what's going on fundamentally, but there's some activity going on in here that it, look at this structurally, Barry. Look at where the lows came in. Now we're sitting right on top of those highs when it was putting in its low and then doing the little false break. What stands out to you on the wheat chart? Because I know you called the bottom. You said that is the low a few weeks ago.
Yep.
What
And I stand
what
by that.
yeah, what stands out to you?
Well, I think where it held exactly what you're talking about. It held perfectly, textbook, right on top of the old resistance,
Mm-hmm.
right? That 600 level right in there.
Yeah. Yep. Down here.
So that's it. That's what we want. We want the counter trends to hold on support. It did that, textbook like. And I think it wouldn't be unreasonable to look at least the ABCD target getting up into the that 36 area.
Yeah, let's put that in.
There you go.
Yep, it would head up towards the full square resistance up here.
But boy, clearing that 50% would be a nice thing. Take some pressure off.
Absolutely. That's the next big battle, and that's
Yeah.
around 650, 652.
But commodities, what happened? Look what happened in June, right? It'll kind of act like, oh, I can't even walk, and then just scream out of there, right?
Right.
What happened at that 50% square, right, in June? How it kind of sat around under it for a while.
Yep. And then just ripped right through it. And
rips. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So
yep.
that's why you want to get in at the low risk points and not try to chase these things.
Right. Let's jump to the next one. Speaking of ripping, look at sugar.
Ooh.
Now, again, there's no setup here, but I wanted to show you guys this chart.
What do you mean? There was a setup at the high.
Oh, yeah. This was the short set. I'm talking about here. This is where we are. This
setup
week,
is called exit setup.
yeah. Its move is over. It's done. Yeah. But look at how, even now, as wild as the price action is, look at how harmonic this thing is, right? Mm-hmm. We came down. We had a battle for 3 or 4 days here at this full square. We got stuck under it. Boom, straight down to the half square. Battle for 2, 3, 4 more days. Wham. And then bouncing. Look at these bounces between the half square and the full square the last few days.
Yeah.
It's huge volatility. But again, if you have the levels and you use the squares, you can gauge whether it makes sense or not to play.
Exactly.
And that's what I wanted to show you on this. The things to notice, we had a nice move, right? If you caught it, great. If you participated, take profits, get out, step aside. Because look, we're on the the low came on the full square. We came into trend line support from the lows last September, October in 2022. And if you look at it on a monthly basis, we also picked up this trend line from the takeoff lows in early 2020. Look at how close that was there.
Yeah.
I mean, nice, huh?
Very nice.
So it's again an example of kind of our methodology. And if you want to see me talking about this, go back the last couple of months and look at talking about when it was coming into this high and what we were looking for. And we were looking for a turn and a place to go because of squares, because of, it's squaring out, because of time counts, because of cycles. And then once you get this thing triangulated, right, here's the false breaks, right? Couldn't clear the previous high. Then we start getting stuck under, right? Where it just lower highs come in and lower lows, and then it goes. And that's the way these commodities move. And so sugar is a good example. Barry, anything else you want to point out on this chart? Because I do think it's really good from an education standpoint.
Yeah, I think I have a daily square, but I think you're 50% around a little above 22 and a half there.
Right.
So I have 22 and a half exactly.
Right, so I got 23.
My 90 degrees from the high. So I think that's the level to watch. I mean, yeah, you can unload most of it in here because we're kind of there. And we also did 112 and a half degrees down, which is 90 plus 22 and a half. And, commodities does, that's a good movement for commodities. And we could go another half square. That would take us down to 1970, 1950, that area. But I don't know why you'd want to fight for that last few when you got such a clean shot. and everything's, blooming.
Yeah, the
But
other thing I agree. The other thing I want to point out here is we've done this fast move has been basically 18 days in time.
Mhm.
And if you go back and you study sugar and watch the fast moves, 18 is one that comes up a lot.
Mhm.
So,
So
maybe we go in, and you could see by the way these bars are moving, we're probably heading into that, messy, choppy
right.
battle phase where it's not trending anymore.
But
So
long as we're under that 22, what did I say, 22 and a half,
22
right?
and a
Yeah.
half. Yeah.
Long as we're below that, we can't really settle above it. We could go, we could go a little lower, maybe even do
Yeah.
a little false break under the line and then
Sure. Sure.
snap back into place. So,
No question.
but the low, it does look pretty good as far as
Yep.
moves go.
Yep. So there's sugar for you. All right. Next, let's go to coffee. And this is one we've been bullish on for a few weeks here. And the bullishness paid off this week. Similar to wheat, right? Like if you look at here, this kind of same pattern as wheat, right? Moves, shallow pullback, moves higher, shallow pullback, moves higher, shallow pullback. It's just grinding up. The thing to notice here is we're battling at this full square and running into some resistance there, which is expected. And that's around 192. If we can settle on top of that, it opens up the next half square, which takes us up to about 215. Also, one thing to notice is that we were kind of following this trend line for a while, and now we've moved to a little steeper trend line. So there's some momentum that's kicking in, and we could maybe start catching that fast move once we get above this next full square. On the weekly, I wanted to show you something to help you have some perspective on why we're slowing down a little bit here and why we're pausing. We're right into that full square resistance. So obviously pushing through this in this 195 area, we could sit on top of that. On a weekly basis, we then open up 220. So this is the next big test for coffee, is pushing through this the current resistance that we're battling with. Coffee is also one where you called the low out when I pointed it out. What are you seeing here? What jumps out to you?
Well, as long as we're about that 170 level, I think let it continue. I think we got more to go.
Mm-hmm.
Just when we think there's no inflation, right? Coffee's been making highs for 3 months. It's like, isn't it amazing how all that?
Yeah, it really is something.
So I think long as we're above that 170 area,
Which is down in here.
well, and that automatically holds the trend line at least for next week. So yeah, I think let it be, let it move.
Yeah, let's go to the last one we wanted to look at, which was copper. I know you covered it. I just wanted to show the view with the squares that I have here. The key thing is we closed over this full square. So now, as long as we can clear this, and that's in the 386 area, as long as we, like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, have bars that stay on top of this, it opens up a move to 409, which is the half square up in this area. We've taken out the downtrend line, which is positive, right? We took it out, went back into it, danced around it, and then later this week, it pushed up after Wednesday. So copper to me looks poised to go. The note I also have is that the monthly half square is at 381. As long as we're on top of that 381 level, and I think you have the same level, Barry, right?
Yeah.
And it's a monthly level for me. As long as we're on top of that monthly, we're in good shape. So I think low fours on copper is completely realistic. And maybe that does fit with your Hang Seng chart.
It could be. I mean, some of these, they can give little hints. It could be. Looks possible. So yeah.
So that's it for me. I guess, Barry, the last topic I want to talk about, since we're coming onto a cycle hit, is there anything you do differently when you're in a major time window? Like what do you do that's different from a normal week when you have versus when you have a time window like we're entering into right now?
Mhm. Well, I mean, my general take is I'm always looking at the pattern going into any kind of a time window. We talk about that a lot, right? We talk about the structure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'm really looking at structure and price levels. That's really, really what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think that's sort of the template. I'm looking at price levels and price action to see, is it getting weak? Are we getting divergences set up? Are we getting squares getting set up? Are we running out cycles? Other ones, in addition to the ones that, like the main ones that might be operating. So I think the difference thing is I'm a little bit more on pins and needles, watching watching the price movement. And I'm looking at lower time frames first, like the 4 hour, like you do.
Mm-hmm.
I like to look at the 4 hour to, like in the S&P, I even get down to the 30-minute to kind of watch the short term. But I like to see like early confirmation. There's nothing like early confirmation. So I like to watch the lower time frame. I would say that's what I do. I like to watch the 4 hour to see
Are you getting higher highs and higher lows and
exactly,
lower highs and
exactly.
lower lows? I
Yep.
mean, the only thing I do differently is these hits like this, and I just show the NASDAQ the NQs as an example.
And we gap up into that.
Yeah, that becomes much more important to me, right? Like I really notice that and say, okay, under normal circumstances, you say, all right, that's important. We hit it. Let's see how the battle goes. When I see a hit like that into a cycle window, I'm saying, okay, this really needs to be drilled down on the lower time frames to see,
Mhm.
are we seeing any changes in price action? Are we seeing any changes in character in that market? Because we know we have the time window, and now we're getting a message from the chart that, hey, we also have a price window is hitting. So it's that price and time combination that we see.
Right.
So I do try to pay close attention to these sorts of things. Or, do we get squares? Are we getting a movement into that squares out? It becomes higher on my sort of priority list. Is there any of that sort of thinking in your mind when you look at these?
Yeah, I mean I guess there are not multiple processes running, you know,
Right.
when you look like that. And and also having it to trying to find out if a change in trend can take place, looking at that potential versus trying to trade the next leg. I mean, there's a gap there. So there isn't that much pressure. I think the one pressure would be to see how you want to manage your positions. By the
Mm-hmm.
time, if it gets into any kind of a price level and time, I'm always, I'm ready to step out, step out. It's like,
Right. Right.
but watching that closely, what happened. Another thing is, for example, if it blows out through a square, you have a chance you're looking again for a chance to get back in for the continuation of the move. So there's a lot of those are the kind of things you want to look for, that I look for when it's in a corner.
Mm-hmm.
One, we're looking at the potential to say, did it come in? The second is, if it doesn't, then we know when squares get blown out, it goes to the next half square or the next full square.
It
So
moves. Yeah.
yeah, so you want to look at the structure versus that, and to see, you know, is there a low risk place to get back in?
Mm-hmm.
That's I think that's kind of, yeah, it's simple.
It's pattern, it's timing, and its structure
Yeah, and
for
you
you.
kind of want to know purpose too, right? I mean, if you're just sitting there looking to short, you're not going to see the long trade come in.
No, that's exactly right. You'll be blind to it.
You're going to be blind to it. And if you're only looking to go long, then you're not going to see the short coming up. So you're going to be
Mm-hmm.
buying at the wrong place. So you have to kind of keep it neutral and let the price and the pattern and like these squares get holding or not is a huge deal for us, because we sort of live and die by that. Whatever you guys are doing, have a very clear line marking off, when you think market's going to do one or the other, and price level is the best, combined with some kind of a pattern. That
Agreed.
makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Anyway, Barry, thanks for another great show. Really, really good coverage. We know we're coming into this cycle period as well as a seasonal period. I didn't even mention, but the winter solstice is coming up too.
Oh, right. Right along. Yep. Right
In
in
the next,
time, along with your rebel cycle.
along with the rebel yell cycle. So
Mhm.
you got a natural cycle, you got the rebel yell cycle, you got time counts. It's time to have your head on a swivel, look both ways before you cross the street because it's that time right now. So let's see. We don't know if it, as we've talked about multiple times, it doesn't mean you get a V in every market, right? Some
Yeah.
markets will V, some markets will go sideways, some markets will continue the current trend.
Mhm.
And the key, as Barry has said, is to watch price action, watch the levels, because once you see price interact with the level, it gives you a good idea of what is more likely to happen. And that's the methodology, and that's how we try and approach the whole thing. So um, again, great job, Barry. Everybody will see you next week. I don't think we're going to be recording between Christmas and New Year's, so next week's probably our last show until New Year's.
Mhm. So
But
don't miss it.
yeah, yeah. So don't miss. And I don't think it's going to be a boring holiday. I mean, the way these markets are setting up, it really looks like there could be some serious
Yeah, I don't
action
think it's going to be boring. We're going to
with
have
less liquidity too.
yeah, we're going to
That
have
would
movement, especially with the rebel yell cycle coming in. It's not going to be no, it's not going to be sleepy.
no. So we'll see. Anyway, have a great week, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please like, share, ring the bell. Subscribe to the channel. We would appreciate that. And we'll talk to you next week.
All right, great job, great job. Good coverage on the commodities, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Barry.
Take care. Bye.
All right. Bye bye.